morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our 24th annual Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. I'm Kevin Cochran, and I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Field Operations for USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service here in the South area. We're so happy to have you join us today. And first, we want to take a few seconds to recognize our this year's sponsors for our second annual virtual conference. And those sponsors are Arkansas State Ecotox Research Facility, Aquarius Farm Control by Applied Digital Inc., Arkansas State University, Arkansas Water Resource Center at University of Arkansas, Better Cotton, Energy Solution, Arkansas Energy Solutions, Farm Credit Association of Arkansas, PNR Surge Valves, Pump Tech Bold Cypress LLC, the Judd Hill Foundation, USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, and USDA Agricultural Resource Service, and the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture. Please visit our website at arksewc.com to learn more about our conference. One of the benefits of participating in a live virtual conference is that you can submit questions throughout the conference in our Q&A box. And we will answer those questions, as many as we can, at the end of the conference. If you want, you can submit your questions anonymously. Just make sure you click the anonymous button before submitting your question. If you're participating in the live conference using Zoom registration link that was sent to you, and you need CEU credits or professional development credits, at the end of the virtual conference, there'll be a poll for you submitting which credits you actually need. This conference has been approved for 2 CEU credits for the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers, the Arkansas Department of Education, the Arkansas State Plant Board Crop Consultant Organization, the Arkansas Agriculture Consultant Association, and Certified Crop Advisors. Next, we will have Dr. Michele Reba, Research Hydrologist and Acting Research Leader at the Delta Water Management Research Unit at ASU for USDA Agriculture Research Services. Dr. Reba.
Hello. I'm so excited that you've decided to join the conference today. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 24th Annual Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. My name is Michele Reba, and I'm a research hydrologist and currently the acting research leader at the Delta Water Management Research Unit, which is part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service. Again, it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's conference. The Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference, unlike so many I attend, attempts to connect you directly with producers and researchers equally in order to deliver applied, timely, and relevant information. It's one of the reasons why I love this conference. For the past decade, the Delta Water Management Research Unit has been working to deliver research that is also applied, timely, and relevant to issues that producers face. I want to share a few highlights from the research we are doing at the unit. First off, the mission of the Delta Water Management Research Unit is the preservation of water quantity and quality for agriculture. We are located on campus at Arkansas State University and began our efforts in 2011. Working closely with area producers and other collaborators, including private companies and state and federal agencies, our research aims to improve agricultural production and natural resources that sustain yield and grain quality while reducing inputs and environmental risks. Our unit is made up of 3 scientists, myself, Dr. Joseph Massey, and Dr. Arlene Adviento-Borby. My research efforts are focused on water management and water availability. I use instruments that are able to measure a field integrated flux of water, carbon dioxide, and methane. These instruments are able to measure these fluxes year-round, and so provide an evaluation at a systems level and don't simply focus on the production season. We are working to answer questions regarding rotation, residue management, and winter flooding. On the water quality side, I have water quality instrumentation that contribute to statewide and nationwide networks aimed at understanding how field management impacts excess nutrients and sediment loss in runoff while sustaining yield and limiting inputs. Lastly, my team is working to implement the first ever case study of artificially adding water back to the declining alluvial aquifer in the Arkansas Delta. We are working closely with producers, universities, and state and federal agencies to determine the utility of using managed aquifer recharge in the Arkansas Delta. Recent research from Dr. Massey is focused on irrigation automation because he believes that further refinements in irrigation water management will require advances in irrigation automation technologies. As part of this effort, he's developing a rice irrigation system called Automatic Early Cascade Irrigation Shutoff, or ACIS, that may conserve water on par with multiple inlet rice irrigation. Joe is also working with A-State researchers to further our understanding of the impact cover crops have on production. Lastly, Joe is passionate about transferring research findings to producers. One example of this is his development of the rice hog, helping agriculture with greenhouse gases, and the rice wolf, working on lowering field emissions programs in collaboration with Riceland Foods Incorporated. The purpose of these programs is to promote a voluntary single dry down event to reduce methane emissions from Arkansas rice without increasing nitrous oxide. Dr. Adviento-Borby assesses effective conservation management practices in irrigated rice and cotton systems, seeking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and water use while sustaining yield. Her team was the first to report greenhouse gas emission from the row irrigated rice, where they found that increased nitrous oxide emissions were offset by reductions in methane. Good news for rice farmers participating in carbon markets. Also, in collaboration with Arkansas State researchers and Rice Tech, Arlene has been seeking rice genes that help rice cope with high night air temperature. We are all working in collaboration with professors at Arkansas State University, the University of Arkansas, the University of Memphis, and other institutions to advance our understanding of row crop systems, greenhouse gas emissions, water quality response to managed aquifer recharge, machine learning in agriculture, and amendments in rice. We are using remote sensing and spatial analysis to improve water management and incorporating the use of drones in plot, field, and farm studies. From this short description of our activities, you can see we're very busy. However, all of our efforts come back to the mission of preserving water quantity and water quality for agriculture in the lower Mississippi River Basin. Back to the conference. I applaud the Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference Steering Committee for organizing the event. I have been fortunate to be a steering committee member of this conference for the past 10 years. And have seen the conference participation steadily grow to nearly 400 plus participants prior to the pandemic. The steering committee is made up of a dedicated group of producers, university, and state and federal agency representatives. The steering committee is delighted to share the conference content with you today, despite the challenges that virtual conferences carry. The steering committee is thankful for the Arkansas Cooperative Extension communication teams for their technical assistance in producing the virtual program. The committee is also thankful for university administration for their diligent effort in facilitating this conference under these challenging circumstances. I would also like to thank the sponsors for their financial support of the conference. Lastly, I would like to especially thank Spring Sneed for keeping us all organized, Kevin Cochran for serving as the MC for the conference today, and Adam Eads for serving as the steering committee chair. Thank you all. In closing, I would like to thank the presenters for sharing their time, energy, and ideas with the participants. We are optimistic that we will see you all in person next year for the 25th annual Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. Again, welcome. I wish you all a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reba, for that gracious welcome. Next, we have Brandon Cain, an Arkansas producer from White County, and Jan Yingling, a U of A System Division of Agriculture Extension Service agent that will talk to us about farmers' perspective on early adoption of irrigation technology. Brandon, Jan?
Thanks for having us. I'm Jan and this is Brandon, and we're here today in North Central Arkansas in White County. We are located in the Delta region, and we are on Brandon's farm here in Griffithville, Arkansas. He farms 1,000 acres of soybeans and around 900 acres of corn. We wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the irrigation best management practices that Brandon has put in on his farm, and some of the ways that other farmers may have questions or may not know where to go next, and they may be interested in irrigation best management practices on their farm. So we wanted to talk about some early adoption strategies to be able to use irrigation technologies on your farm. So Brandon, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about why you chose to become interested in irrigation best management practices on your farm?
Okay, so I started using some of these practices to try to be more efficient with my irrigation. I wanted to be able to save some water, and in the long run save on inputs, time, and gain efficiency and yield.
So tell me a little bit about your difficult fields that you have here in your area. How can irrigation best management practices help you a little bit?
Okay, that's where I kind of started putting it into place, was on my more difficult fields. Is you got fields where you got multiple row lengths and multiple runs of pipe across the middle of a field. It gives you a good starting point to be able to get the right hole size for the row length and the irrigation that's needed.
So Brandon, why don't you tell us more about your why? Why are you using irrigation best management practices or these tools on your farm?
Okay, so originally I started using these tools to be able to more efficiently water my farm, and mainly to better water the difficult fields on my farm. The ones that had the multiple poly pipelines, the different row lengths, and possibly limited flow. And ultimately, be a more efficient irrigator and save water, conserve water, and ultimately increase my bottom line.
So this is maybe a starting point or a jumping off point for you. Is that how you use this?
Yes.
On those difficult fields, to kind of give you somewhere to start, somewhere to
Right.
keep going.
Right.
And a kind of an idea of how to fix that or better irrigate that difficult field.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about some of your personal hurdles that you had to jump to be able to introduce some of these technologies on your own farm? As a county agent, I hear a lot of excuses from folks about why they don't want to try out any of these irrigation technologies on their farm. So why don't you share some of your personal stuff with us?
Okay, so the biggest hurdle was probably the cost of the equipment. Is it effective, going to pay back on my farm? Next would be just my lack of knowledge of the equipment.
Yeah, we don't want to try out things that we don't know about.
Right.
And what about the reliability? Did you question the reliability or accuracy?
Yes, that was another one. Are these sensors trustworthy enough to be able to rely on?
Mm-hmm. So I hear people say, well, I turn the pump on Monday and I have my set schedule. Was that that process that you had?
Yes. I feel like most of my farms, I've got a schedule where I water, and I go from one field to the next, and that's something I get stuck in, and that was one of the reasons is I felt like that there's nothing else I could have done differently.
Yeah. Tell me about the crop termination.
Probably the biggest hurdle there was being able to trust and rely on the sensors to be able to terminate or to start an irrigation.
Okay, so explain to us how these irrigation best management practices have helped you on your own farm.
Okay, so by using these sensors, we've been able to see where different crops use different amounts of water at different growth stages of the year. Whereas before, like I said, I was on a schedule, and I watered a field, then I went to the next field because it was its turn. Now I look at the sensor and I see, well, just because it's that field's turn, it might be soybeans and it might not be using the amount of water that the corn is using at this time. So I make a decision, and I don't go to the soybeans, I go to the corn because its usage is higher at that time.
So there is a calculator app that helps you do this. It can calculate those daily usages at those growth stages. So you've told me in the past that you've been able to save how many days on an irrigation possibly?
Well, possibly a day, maybe 2 days on each irrigation. If I pull the sensor up and just because normally I would have turned the water on, I can look at the sensor and see that, I could probably go another day or two. So I wait, and by the end of the year, it potentially saves me 1, 2, maybe 3 irrigations.
So a saved irrigation also saves you on what on your farm?
Everything. Saves on water, it saves on fuel, electricity, time, labor, ultimately increasing the bottom line.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about surge valves and how you've incorporated them on your farm, and kind of what's your thoughts on surge valves?
Okay, when I first saw a surge valve, I thought the purpose of it was just to switch your water. I thought it was a lazy man's way of switching their water from one side of the field to the other. But after using one and seeing how they operate, it's really a very beneficial tool.
Okay, so explain to me how this surge valve has helped you on this one really difficult field you have on your property.
Okay, I've got one field that's don't have a lot of water. We don't have a lot of flow, and it's really flat on top, and then it falls off to a hillside. In the past, I've always waterlogged the top half of the field, and the bottom of the field didn't get enough water. This surge valve, when you set it up right, it solves that problem, because it's flipping that water back and forth, giving that top flat part of the field a breath of air, but also letting that water slowly make it to the bottom.
So what have you seen as a result in that field using the surge valve?
Increase yields.
Which is what we're after.
Right.
Right. So now we wanted to talk a little bit about the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture's Most Crop Per Drop Irrigation Yield Contest. So Brandon has entered fields in that contest, corn and soybean fields, the last several years, and actually won 3rd place last year. So we just wanted to kind of go over it and maybe just alleviate some fears or some misconceptions, or just answer some questions for you guys. So for the most crop per drop, we have this contest available in rice, soybean, and corn. You choose, as a producer, you get to choose the field on your farm. You choose a minimum of a 30-acre field. It can be a problem field if you like, or one that you need more help with, or it can be your best field. You get to choose that. You will let your county agent know that you are interested in this, and don't wait until a couple of days before you need to irrigate, which has happened in the past. So you just let your county agent know that you're interested. There's a form that you fill out. You just put some basic information on there. The U of A irrigation technicians will come out. They'll let you borrow the equipment. They'll seal your flow meter on that actual field so we can keep up with how much water you're actually using. And then you just grow your crop, whichever one it is that's in that field. And you try to use other irrigation technologies that you would like to try out. At the end of the year, you harvest that field. We'll take a section of that field out, and then you will get a report card back from the irrigation team, and they'll tell you how you stacked up against the other farmers that were entered into the contest. And you can use these new adoptions and new technologies on your farm on other fields after you kind of get used to them and get comfortable using these tools. Brandon has been able to do this. So give me a little bit of advice or experience with the most crop per drop contest.
Okay, first I want to say this is kind of how I was introduced to these technologies. And second, we entered the contest to try to better ourselves in the long run.
After you get your report card back, they do select winners for each crop. Those winners will receive irrigation equipment or cash prizes. So don't wait, go ahead and do that. Sign up today. If you're scared about that or have some fears about it, just contact your county agent. They'll walk you through everything. The irrigation technicians are amazing, and they'll come out and they'll help you with each and every piece of equipment, and they'll give you tips and advice. So we encourage you, Brandon and I do, to go ahead and enter that most crop per drop, not necessarily just to win, like Brandon said, but to learn and to use some of these technologies for free. So Brandon and I want to give you some take-home advice today, some real nuggets that you can take and run with. Number one, work with your county agent. Your county agent they may not know a lot about irrigation technologies or new adaptations or things. I did not, but Brandon came and said, hey, I'm interested in this. Have you heard about it? I want to learn. So he came to me and we have learned together. So that is probably my number one advice. Go to your county agent and get involved. If you have a question about something and they don't know about it, they know the people that can help them answer those questions. They also would love to do irrigation demonstrations on your farm. You get to use all the equipment for free, and then they get to learn and have a demonstration on your farm. So it's a win-win for both groups of people. We have flow meters, surge valves, soil moisture sensors, telemetry units. We have tons of equipment that you can use that are right at your fingertips. You just have to ask for the help. And we would love to be able to work with you. That is our job. So Brandon's got some advice for you guys out there as well.
Yeah, like Jan said, don't be afraid to ask your county agent. They've got all these tools at your disposal. You know, they come out, they install them all, show you how it works. They're great tools that can help you out on your farm.
So do you have one tool or one technique that you really think that people should try out first, or that has impacted you the most that you might want to tell folks about?
Yeah, I would say for me, the most impactful thing has been the computerized hole selection. That's really benefited me more than anything else I've done as far as irrigation goes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us today, and we enjoyed our time with you.
Wow. Sounds like some great things going on in Griffinville. Thank you, Brandon and Jan, for sharing a farmer's perspective of early adoption of irrigation technology. Everyone, please remember that you can enter your questions in the Q&A box, and we will answer those questions live during our question and answer segment later on. Now we have a small break before our next speaker to acknowledge our sponsors. As always, we want to thank our sponsors for their support. And next, we have Jennifer James, an Arkansas producer from Jackson County. We'll talk about irrigation practices on her family farm in Jackson County. Jennifer.
When it comes to soil moisture sensors, surge valves, polytubing, and using pipe planter or other programs for irrigation on your farm, we feel like we have tried and failed and tried and succeeded at many of those things. So I just want to kind of go through what we've tried on our farm today and talk a little bit about some of our learning experiences and some of our successes. I think it's very important for all of us to continue to try and do better with our irrigation practices, to conserve the water, to become more efficient, and to also raise a great crop. So we must always continue to learn, tweak those processes. What works for somebody else may not work for you. It may be similar, but you have to kind of tweak it for your farm and your field and your crops. And I think this conference is a great way to learn about different techniques from farmers and other folks and implement those and try them out on your farm. On our farm, we began to use furrow irrigation many years ago. In fact, I looked up when we bought our first poly pipe roller, and it was in 2004. So I know we were doing it by then. And you know, we just took a stab at it. We bedded our fields and we rolled out the pipe. We punched holes along the furrows and just did the best that we could. But one of the things I remember after those first couple of years is we were looking at the hours on our tractors and actually the hours that our employees were putting in, and they had been reduced by 250 to 300 hours per person. And so we were really shocked at that. Obviously that's savings, and it also helps out your employees. You know, they have a better summertime when you're able to schedule that irrigation and make it work. You know, we were irrigating 5 or 6 times or more during the summer, and so it just really helped not having the levees in our corn and our soybeans. We also saw an increase in our corn and our soybean yields, just strictly due to this new irrigation technique. Less cost and more bushels were easy to see that we needed to continue to expand our ability on our farm to use furrow irrigation. In those early years, we chose to improve our irrigation capabilities on most of the land that we owned or had been farming for a long time. We worked to get things you know, precision leveled, or at least to where we could use furrow irrigation. And we went and talked with our landlords and worked with them on some projects to improve their land so that we could farm better and make them more profit as well as ourselves. We now are nearly 100% irrigated. All of our corn and soybeans are row irrigated, and we can see that that is helping to reduce our risk of drought in the summer and just increase our efficiencies and our yields. As we progressed on our understanding of furrow irrigation and began to refine our process, we also learned to use the pipe planner program. We began experimenting with different hole sizes, pipe diameters, surge valves, and even moisture sensors. So we were going along and thought we were doing really well, and in 2017 I had an opportunity to work with Mike Hamilton and learn from him. I think we have to keep moving the needle and keep trying to do better as farmers, and so that's when we really started to learn and refine our processes when we started to work with Mike. We quickly learned that we really didn't know what we were doing, or there was a lot more to learn and a lot more to do out there. One of the first things that we did was we installed some soil moisture sensors in a cornfield. Mike Hamilton and our county agent Matthew Davis, as well as some NRCS technicians, came out to teach me how to install those moisture sensors in the corn. We were using the watermark sensors with a Precision King monitoring system, and there was a lot to learn about how to install those within the row in the cornfield and to make sure that it was all working properly and doing a good job. One of the funny things that we did do that summer was I was working with one of our fellows on the farm to irrigate that field, and we were watching those sensors all summer long, and we encountered a day where we looked at the software program and it looked kind of crazy to us. This is a screenshot of what the sensors were telling us. The green line is the 6-inch depth, the yellow line is the 12-inch depth, the blue line is the 18-inch depth, and the orange one is 30 inches deep. So we had performed the irrigation around June 29th that year and saw that immediately all of the sensors were telling us to irrigate again. And we went out to the field and we looked at the soil, and the soil was still just sopping wet. I mean, it appeared that there was no need for irrigation. So we came back in and we looked at this, and we saw that 18-inch sensor on July the 6th above the red line, which indicates that it was time for irrigation. And I called Mike Hamilton and I said, Mike, this sensor's not working, something's wrong with it, come out, you know, we need it to be fixed. And he pulled it up and he looked at it and he said, no, it's just that hot and it's just that dry. Your corn is actually using more water from the 18-inch depth than from the top, which made sense after he told me that, because that's where the root mass, you know, most of the roots were at that time. And so we continued to irrigate, and as you can see, we irrigated every time it was necessary throughout the rest of the season, and learned a lot about the sensors. After that season, we could see that understanding what the plant needed under the surface was very important. Simply to know that the surface was dry or was no longer good enough or accurate enough way to irrigate for the needs of the plant. The next few summers, I demonstrated several other different types of moisture sensors, be it the volumetric, some different watermarks with different software monitoring, the telemetry packages that went with it, and it was really overwhelming. There are a lot of companies out there who are making excellent products, and so we were trying to decide which one would work better on our farm. We farm in about kind of 3 or 4 distinct areas, and so we wanted to be able to purchase enough soil moisture sensors with the telemetry to kind of mimic those areas and follow a few of the the sensors to be able to engage our irrigation throughout the season. So we ended up choosing to use the watermark system with the Precision King telemetry, and one of the main reasons that we chose the watermark is there's just a lot of historical data behind how to trigger your irrigation from those, and a lot of folks that understand how they work, and we could get a lot of help through the process. After we began using the watermark systems for a little while, and I kind of dabbled back into the volumetric just to make sure that I had made the right choice, and for me, the watermark just made more sense, and it's all about you, it's all about your farm, your folks who are managing your irrigation. They all will help you, they all will make you more efficient, they will help your crop yield more. It's just what you understand the best and what works on your farm, so any of them will work. Another irrigation method that we have worked to incorporate and use efficiently on our farm is multiple inlet rice irrigation, or MIRI rice irrigation. Several years ago, probably 10 or more years, we tried on a few fields of rice to start with MIRI irrigation, and we just rolled out the pipe up and over the levees. We left the end open, and it was a mess. The wind blew the pipe, and the water would vibrate up and over the levees and cause the levees to erode, and then we'd have to try to build the levees up in the mud. I mean, we failed at that attempt. And a lot of folks on the farm said, never again, never again. But we did try again, and we've been able to use the pipe planter plans and a little help from some other irrigation specialists that we have been able to successfully implement MIRI on our farm. We learned a lot about the pressure in the pipe. We learned that you gotta tie it off at the end. And actually in a perfect setup, each patty is supposed to fill the same depth at the same time. And we've been able to achieve that so far. Another thing that works really good for us is to have a little freeboard out in those spills in the rice fields. We've actually been able to use this freeboard to help prevent any bigger problems when we get a really big crazy rain like we have sometimes in the summer, and that has helped us to be able to manage our water levels much better. We do have several zero grade fields, so I would say that at least half or better of the rest of our rice crop is being irrigated by MIRI, and we hope to continue to expand that some each year as we go along. As I said earlier, it's all about trying new techniques, refining each field, and trying to find the best scenario, whether that's in a rice field with MIRI or furrow irrigation in soybeans or corn. The weather conditions can be challenging. Each field has to be set up differently, and these are all opportunities to learn and to expand your use of these different techniques for irrigation. We also had an opportunity to participate in a project with Kellogg and the Nature Conservancy, where we obtained some Murphy timers for our irrigation wells. Once we know the timing of a round of furrow irrigation or when a MIRI rice field will be flooded, These timers can be set to turn off the well, and this has enabled us to be better managers with our irrigation water and our irrigation labor. There are more expensive types with telemetry, and we just haven't been able to find that we can afford those. So using the Murphy switches has been very successful for us. We also feel like pipe planter has come a long way in the past few years, or maybe it's more accurate to say we've gotten better at using pipe planter. But either way, it does take quite a bit of time to get into pipe planter, to get all your fields set up. And this is a job that I would highly recommend that you do in the wintertime. You can get a little bit more help in the winter, and you're not so pressed to have your plan because it's time to start putting your pipe out. We learned that we take the flow at the end of the prior season on our wells, and that has helped us to be able to obtain that information prior to the next year. We also use our topography maps to determine the elevation on the edge of the field that the poly pipe will be laid. So just by a little bit of thinking ahead and work in the wintertime, you can at least get your plan started and you're not so pressed. You know, it may not be the plan that you end up with as the season goes on. You may have to make some tweaks and some adjustments as you go, but at least you've got a starting point. Over time, we have compiled quite a lot of information to be able to use the pipe planter software program. Fields that we may have first started out with furrow irrigation with one run of pipe, all the same hole sizes, and now are much more refined with multiple runs of pipe, different hole sizes, different places for buildup to ensure the field waters out at the same time. It is quite a bit of work and it's time consuming, but it's a lot of trial and error as well. I think we are definitely irrigating more efficiently and using our equipment and labor more efficiently as well. We've been able to adapt this on all types of fields, all shapes, sizes, soil types, and crops. So it just takes work and it can be done. It can be overwhelming and challenging, so I say start small. Get the advice from irrigation specialists, county agents, NRCS technicians, or your neighbors, your farmer friends. Not every scenario works for every farm or for every field, but I would bet that there is a technique that you can try that will save you money, save you water, and most of all, always be forward thinking. We should always look to leave our farms better for the next generation, and by conserving water and being more efficient, we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you for always trying and always succeeding there in Jackson County. We've certainly learned some interesting facts about irrigation practices on your family farm. Remember, if you have any questions, please enter those in the Q&A box and we will answer those live during our question and answer segment. You can submit your questions anonymously, and just to make sure, you need to click anonymous before submitting your question. Before our most crop for drop presentation, we'll take a 5-minute break to recognize our sponsors. See you in a little while. We certainly appreciate all our sponsors and their support. Earlier, Jane and Brandon discussed the Most Crop for Drop contest. Now we will have the Most Crop for Drop awardees for 2022. and the presentation will be by Dr. Chris Henry and his team of dedicated researchers. They have awarded the first, second, and third place winners in the categories of corn, soybeans, and rice. Dr. Henry?
On behalf of myself, Chris Henry, Russ Parker, and Travis Clark, please join us in congratulating the winners of the 2021 University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture Most Crop Per Drop Contest. For the corn category, the first place winner was Brandon Cain with 280.7 bushels per acre and 12.4 bushels per inch. For the third year in a row, second place, Terry Smith, and third place, Adam Chappell. Here is a message from Brandon Cain about the contest.
I'm Brandon Cain. I'm from Southeast White County, a farmer around the Griffithville area. I've been entering this contest for 3 years now in the soybeans and the corn. That's what I grow, and been using these technologies, these moisture sensors and pipe planter, and doing some cover crops to try to help my irrigation efficiency. And we've learned a lot about it for the last 3 years of doing this. This year we got lucky. We picked a good hybrid and irrigated, according to the sensors, and it all worked out in the end. And I'd like to thank Jan Yingling and Greg Simpson and Russ Parker for helping with all that, and look forward to entering again next year.
The winners of the rice category are first place, Stephen Hoskins, achieving the highest water use efficiency ever recorded in the 4-year history of the contest with 9.77 bushels per inch and 239.9 bushels per acre. Second place, Seth Tucker for the second year in a row. And finally, third place, Matthew Felke. Next is a message from Stephen Hoskins about how he managed his irrigated rice field.
Hi, I'm Stephen Hoskin, farmer from Stuttgart, Arkansas. And this year I entered the crop per drop. I'm a third generation farmer, rice farmer. I don't know how many generations back farming my family goes, but this year I entered the contest. It's my first year to enter, and we used the little demonstration pitless tailwater pump. First time to ever use that. I think there's a few of those around the state. But we planted 753 hybrid right at the end of April, I think the 27th. Planted about 18 pounds. Came up well, especially being that late, and grew off. It was all row rice, row irrigated with that pitless pump. We ended up, I think, pumping about 13.5 inches of water. They determined after it, we were able to utilize roughly 11, 12 inches of rainfall during the growing season. And we ended up averaging dry roughly 239 on that plot. That's as good a yield as I made anywhere in any field, flooded, row irrigated. Didn't seem to matter. That was far and away, or as good as any of my flooded, maybe a little better. I would like to thank my crop consultant, Wes Long. He's been with me for 6 years now. He's been great, helped me a lot, learned a lot, very knowledgeable. Also like to thank NRCS for helping sponsor, pay for that pump. Without it, obviously we wouldn't have won or even been in the competition probably. Also like to thank Rice Tech for a lot of reasons. Also Delta Plastics, we use their pipe in the field, and they're a sponsor, along with all the rest of the sponsors, also including Arkansas Rice Research Promotion Board. Thankful to them and all the research they've funded, how they've managed to check off dollars. Thank you.
The winners of the soybean category are, first place, Chad Render with 5.23 bushels per inch and 98.8 bushels per acre. Again, the highest water use efficiency ever achieved in the soybean contest. Second place, Cody Fincher. And third place, Heath Donner. Let's hear from Chad Render about his experience with the contest.
I'm Chad Renner from Jefferson County. Live just south of Pine Bluff around the Noble Lake area. I was fortunate enough to win the competition on the soybean most crop per drop irrigation contest. This is my third year to be in the competition. I started in 2019. It's kind of a different year. You know, we had all that crazy weather happening last February with the snow and all that, and then it seemed like it dried up pretty fast in March, and then had the big rain event in June. So it's been kind of a high and low on weather events, you know, and I start seeing that more and more each year. We put this crop on the ground. Just seems like big weather events that just seems to make it a little bit more challenging. The things in my mind that really helped me to get that yield with the least amount of water was having the nutrients in my soils in the fall, have everything bedded up, ready to plant. And so as early as I can, I try to get in there with the planters and start on the soybean crop. It's just a really good competition. You learn a lot. That's what I really love about this, is just what we gain, the knowledge that what old school farming we think, and, you know, this new technology, new varieties that can push through some stress that actually is a benefit to the plant versus us just trying to I'm going to say nurture it and baby it, thinking we're doing the best thing for it. And a lot of times that's not the best thing for it. I do want to thank Russ Parker with the U of A. He heads up this program for the university, and he's made it very, very simple for us to get our flow meters in and get it installed. Because, you know, when we decide we want to do this, it's usually, hey, I'm watering tomorrow. So that gives him a short window to get in here, to get down here and get everything set up. And so I do want to put a special thanks out to Mr. Russ, and then Kurt Beatty with the Jefferson County Extension Service. He was very helpful as well. He was down here hands-on helping get everything situated, because there is a little bit of involvement in getting everything tied in and just making it, you know, where it's legal for everybody and there's no chances of any kind of cheating going on. And also I want to mention Scott Crabb with NRCS. He's been very instrumental in getting me to join in the competition. And each year he's always wants to be a part of it and see, you know, like when we do start the process, because throughout the year he'll, you know, even Kurt and Scott will ask, how's the crop looking, or how's it doing? You know, where do you think you're at? And then as soon as we start harvesting, you know, they're all here again when we do the harvest. And so anyway, it was a very neat year, and I was glad to be a part of it. And just I want to put a special thanks out to those guys, and just thankful that I'm able to farm in Arkansas.
Special thanks to the Arkansas Natural Resource Conservation Service irrigation technicians, the University of Arkansas County Extension agents, and our sponsors for making the fourth year of the contest a success. For more information about the contest or to enter for 2022, please go to our website, www.uaex.uada.edu/irrigation, or contact your local county extension agent or NRCS field office.
Congratulations again to all of the Most Crop for Drop awardees. Please visit our website to learn more about all the winners. Now, Clay Smith, an Arkansas producer from Greene County, and Dr. Joe Massey, a research agronomist with USDA Agricultural Research Service at the Delta Water Management Research Center, will tell us about applications and opportunities of irrigation automation. Clay, Dr. Joe.
Thank you and good morning. Thanks for joining us in the conference today. My name is Joe Massey. I'm a research agronomist with USDA-ARS, and I'm here with Clay Smith, an up-and-coming young farmer farming in Greene County, Arkansas, near Walcott. And today we're going to be talking about irrigation automation. For this presentation, we're first going to define irrigation automation, at least the way that we see it for this presentation, so that we're all on the same page. We'll give a summary of some 2021 field trial results involving different levels of automation. Then we're going to talk about a new system that we're interested in field testing that we're calling automated early cascade irrigation shutoff. And then lastly, an opportunity for those that are interested in irrigation automation to join a working group that was formed last year. So irrigation automation, in this particular context, we're talking specifically those technologies that would apply for furrow and flood irrigated systems, such as we use here in the lower Mississippi River Basin. And the way that we see it is that automation is any technology or process that reduces human interaction with an irrigation related decision or activity. And we say that just to say that automation does not necessarily have to mean a full-on automated system. There's many levels of technology that might be more appropriate to your farm. And so we can break those down into basic and advanced automation, with basic serving a single function and advanced serving multiple functions. For example, in this way of thinking about automation, a spring wound Murphy timer switch is a form of automation, just like a manual rice flood depth is a form of automation. Of course, there are electronic equivalents of these, such as the remote pump control shutoff. And also in this picture is shown a ultrasonic sensor, a water level sensor. And those can be, again, used singly or as part of a more complicated system, such as here, the ultrasonic sensor could provide feedback to the pump control system to control the pump. We have particularly found that the ultrasonic sensors are particularly good at determining when to irrigate, such as in a row rice field, but they're not so good at determining when to turn off the irrigation. And so we often just use a simple timer for that. More complex would be coupling the sensor and the pump control unit to auto valves, such as shown here, where we have a fully automated system. And we've shown that that works just fine in rice and to some degree in soybean. But Clay, I think you have something in particular to say about pipe planner.
We've used pipe planner on our farm. And on this slide, we're using the remote on off. If you want to show that, Dr. Joe, on the slide up there. And coupling that with pipe planner, I think pipe planner is the framework or the footprint to go forward with these basic or advanced automations. If you have all your hole sizes correctly, and then you can turn it on off remotely, and then you're on the right track there.
I agree. Thanks.
Why am I interested in irrigation automation? No, I need to know is the well running. 15 years ago, I remember my dad telling a story that they used pressure transducers to know if the well is actually pumping. And that didn't really go anywhere, but 15 years later, here we are, and we can see if the well's on or off. It reduces stress on the farm in those hard to reach fields, also preventing your polypipe from rolling. And if you're a farmer out there, you know how big of an ordeal that is. It takes half a day the next day or a full day to fix that. You can shut the well on or off from your phone remotely from the house or wherever you're at. And it also, it gives time for more activities on the farm, such as crop scouting.
Okay. Yeah, and as a researcher, I'm interested in automation because I've come to the conclusion that I think to further our water conservation goals in the region, that I think we're going to have to help farmers with some appropriate level of technology, owing to the scale of the operations and the labor issues that always seem to be present. So that's why I'm interested. So we're going to move on to the summary of our 2021 field trials.
So these are the fields on our farm at Walcott. We had corn. These are all cornfields. They're in a no-till cover crop system, and these fields are on electric wells. And we compared fields A and B and C and D. With one of these fields of each having the on-off remote timer, and the others didn't have them. So, like on fields B and D, they had the remote on-off. So I would use the app on my phone, the CropLink system. I would go to the app and I would turn it on or off depending on what I was doing. And then on A and C, I went to the well and manually got out of the truck and turned it on or off. These fields, like I was talking about, where it's hard to reach, this D field that you see on the screen, the well's on the back side of the field. It's hard to get up there. This field was awesome using the CropLink on off from my phone. You know, I didn't have to go up there, even though I did go up there, you know, until I was confident with the system that it worked. You know, we irrigated, you know, 5 or 6, 7 times throughout the season. I'd say the first 3 or 4 times I went to the well using my phone, turn it on and off, making sure it was going to work. But after I was confident with it, I seen how good it worked. You know, the last couple times I just used it from my phone. And as you can see on the next slide, we talk about the data for the water usage.
Okay, yeah, so these are the results. Again, on each of the fields, we had a flow meter. So we measured season-long irrigation use on each. And again, the only difference was whether he had the ability to shut that well off remotely. So in theory, he will get to that sooner because he pretty much had an idea of how long each field needed to run.
Right.
So he might
They
have
were
been
usually in 12-hour settings.
12-hour sets. But as you know, most days go, he may not always be able to get to them at the optimal time, but with the timer, remote timer, he was able to shut that off. So the Smiths do a great job with their irrigation. In fact, they've placed in several of the corn contests, as I understand. And this year's reflecting, again, very efficient water use for corn production. So we're really only talking about shaving maybe an inch or 2 of water off their very low water use. But even still, there's a trend that suggests that the remote pump shutoff allowed a 12%, say 10% savings on the fields for A and B, and then for C and D. And again, he'd mentioned that actually D was one of the more difficult fields to get there. And then that particular field, relative to the control, which was not necessarily hard to get to, you saved about 2 inches out of 9 inches, or about 20% savings. Just a little bit more on the data. This is our first year. Statistically, these weren't different at the 95% confidence level, but I'm fairly certain that by year 2, if all else holds, that we will show statistical differences at 95%. But the trend is clearly there that the timers are saving water. And then, but of course, that's only part of the story.
Right.
The other part are some of the concerns or interests that Clay has that aren't tied to water use. So here are some of the things that you've wanted to share with the audience.
Right, kind of the intangible things that you can't measure. I can see this system working good for, you know, for a field that is far away from home. On the map there, my house is probably, you know, a mile out of the picture, so I'm close. But even with me being that close, I can use the remote on off to do it from the house. You know, this system was just an app on my phone. It was not tied to a sensor, even though I want to go that route maybe in the future, using more automation to get the sensor to tell the well to turn on or off. The company installed the on-off system on the well. So it just required me to download the app and use it. And it was very user-friendly. I use this also when I was punching holes in the polypipe. And if you've ever done that, if you're by yourself, you know that the water can usually outrun you and it can make it to the end and blow out before you can get the holes punched. If you're in a situation like that, and I've done it this year on a couple of different fields, you know, shut it off and get my holes punched, take my time, and then turn the well back on. Also, maybe during a thunderstorm at night, when you know that it might roll your poly pipe over from getting behind it with the well still running. Before that thunderstorm rolled in, whether it rained or not, I can turn it off. And if the thunderstorm came through and it missed us and didn't rain, then I can shut it off for 30 minutes and then turn it back on. Also, the power off text alert, when the lights flicker at the house, and I got a text message over the phone saying, this field, whatever field it was, power off. Then if it didn't rain, I knew I could turn it back on. And that was always something before, when I didn't have these features. Just doing it all manually, the power may flicker, and I knew, well, crap, tomorrow I'm going to have to let it run 6 hours longer because it didn't run all night.
So we're going to move on and talk just a little bit about another study that was conducted in Mississippi County using the Aquarius pump control and automated valve system. And again, the purpose of this study was to compare 4 levels of automation. Again, we're trying to find what is the optimal level of automation from a water use, and then really getting farmer feedback on which of the systems do they like better. So some of the intangibles that Clay had mentioned. In this particular study, we had 16 40-acre fields that were in one solid section together. And we were looking at the manual on and off, which is, again, just the way the farmer typically does it. 4 fields, so one well served 4 fields. There was one where it was manual on, where again the farmer determined when to irrigate, but then they set the timer on the Aquarius system to shut the well off at a predetermined time. We had what we called informed on, and that's where in this with 2021 it was in soybeans, 2020 it was in rice. In 2021 we had soil moisture sensors located at 6, 12, and 18 inches, with that station located about 150 feet from the poly tubing. And so those sensors were determined to help us determine when to irrigate. And then again, the farmer would use the timer off feature. And then we had the close to full auto informed on, where we're getting information from the sensor to determine the timing of irrigation, and then using the 4 auto valves to rotate around each of the 4 fields, again, using the timer off. And so we're using the watermark soil sensors and used a -70 centibar irrigation threshold. We could go lower, but with the 4 field system, you don't want to let the first field get too dry because it's going to take multiple days to get all the way around that block. So we targeted 70 centibars. I'm not going to go so much through the data. These fields are perfect in every way, except they have a lot of variation in soil, particularly with sand contents. And so we know it's going to take a while to show differences in water use, assuming that there will be. But the trend is the same that we're seeing as with Clay's study. And so it seems like just the timer itself is maybe a good starting point on automation that also has other benefits that may also lead to irrigation savings. Okay, next we wanted to talk about the automated early Cascade rice irrigation shutoff system that again is kind of a new concept that would like to discuss with the audience. If you look at the way that rice is still irrigated today, Cascade levee gate flood is still the majority of the rice acres, according to Harkey in 2021. About 32% of our rice acres in Arkansas are using multiple inlet irrigation. Of course, furrow or row rice is really growing, and as of 2020, it's about 12%, or actually over the 3-year period, it averaged 12%. And then alternate wetting and drying flood management, or AWD, is around 3%. So small, but so there's a couple of points to be made here. There's some fields, right, Clay, that even if farmers, like in your case, y'all use MIRI on every acre that you can, but there's certain fields that you really just doesn't work.
Right. On I'd say 80% of our fields, our rice acres are in MIRI. We have some row rice also. And then We have, 100 acres or so that's Cascade flood.
Okay.
And there's just by talking with Joe, there's options out there to use besides Cascade.
So in this particular system, we take a Cascade rice field, and we're trying to recognize that with the water flowing over the levee gates, of course, you build up this cushion of water that flows down. And we know that farmers have generally tried to stop that irrigation and kind of time that so that a whole bunch of water doesn't run off the field. With the advent of some of this simple automation, I think it's going to make this ability to better time that cascade flood much easier. And so in this particular setting, an example, we have a 10 patty straight levee field. Again, the model is a simple model, but it is a tool for us to try to ask questions. Like if we were to put a flood depth sensor in the 8th patty of a 10 patty field and use that flood depth sensor to inform the farmer that, hey, the 8th patty is now full, that would be the first level automation. And then the farmer can decide if they want to drive down and turn the well off, or we could have that sensor shut the well off automatically, or if they don't want the field to be shut off, that sensor could control a system with auto valves that would rotate to some other field. Again, those are the different levels of automation like we talked about before. But in this ACES concept, we would fill the field patty 8 until it's full and then shut the irrigation off. And the next 2 patties serve as catch basins, and they're going to catch that excess irrigation and uncaptured rainfall to irrigate those bottom 2 patties, which represent about 20 to 25% of the field area. The other concept is that we would manage those bottom patties using alternate wetting drying agronomics. And the key points of AWD rice flood management is that we know that we need to hold the flood for at least 10 days after that initial application of nitrogen pre-flood to stabilize the nitrogen. Waiting to draw down the flood depth also allows the canopy to close, helping with weed control. And then the other key aspect with AWD is we know that rice is particularly sensitive to water stress at early reproduction, such as at green ring. So if we take these 2 points and make sure there's water in this catch basin, particularly the first 10 or 14 days after flood initiation and at green ring, the model suggests, and I'm going to show the results here, for a 58-acre field, 10 patty straight levee field using 1,200 gallons per minute. The model should suggest that we could expect about a 16% water savings. Again, when we add water back to the ACES system at those critical times. This data is using 35 years worth of rainfall data. And so it's averaging across dry years, normal years, and wet years. So the model is estimating 31 inches applied to Cascade, 24 inches applied according to using MIRI, and then ACES is somewhat in between at 26 inches. That represents a 60% savings over Cascade. The blue bars are the runoff estimates. And again, that's kind of what the system would be trying to reduce. And in fact, we see that we get about an estimated 50% reduction if we use those lower 2 patties as a catch basin, again, adding water back at the critical times. Versus 12 inches runoff from the Cascade, 6 inches from ACES, and 4 inches estimated from MIRI. And then the key question is, okay, but what happens to the flood depth in the 10th patty? And in this particular model setting, we were targeting a 4-inch flood in that bottom patty. So these are average patty depths over an 85-day irrigation window or irrigation season. And so for comparison, the Cascade averaged 3.5 inches over that 85-day period. MIRI, which does a little better job of maintaining the flood height at an even level, 3.8 average, and the ACES estimated 1.5 inches. In theory, according to the model, that's enough to keep a standing flood on the field most of the time, but clearly there's going to be times when it could go down. And that's why we need to field test this. And again, we're looking at 2 inches average flood depth in the last paddy, serving as a catch basin versus about 4 inches in the Cascade and Miri systems.
I can see where this ACES field would work over Miri if you're not able to do a Miri field. Say if you're susceptible to getting a flood, maybe the river gets out, messes up your polypipe every time you try to do Miri, you could use this ACES over Cascade to save water.
Okay, cool. So the next steps with ACES, we're looking for up to 7 producers that would be willing to field test this system. Each cooperator would be supplied with the flood depth sensor and pump control system for free. And if you're interested in that or just want more details, you can email me. And then lastly, for those that might be interested in helping to promote and or make this technology, develop some of this technology, and Irrigation Automation Working Group was formed last summer. We're seeking people like producers, vendors, and researchers that are interested in promoting and furthering this area. And if you're interested in this, you can either email me or email the email here, myag.technology@gmail.com.
So in summary, some benefits that I seen that were not expected, like I talked about, were being able to shut it off when I was punching the holes in the polypipe. That was a major benefit that I didn't even think of when we were getting these systems, and also being able to turn it off during a thunderstorm at night or a rain shower. I was just thinking of being able to turn it on when I'm going to irrigate, turn it off when I'm going to irrigate. But during these, irregular times when I need to shut it off, I can do that. And also, the power off feature was handy where it told me it was off, but I still need to know if the well is actually pumping. If it's sitting there running, but it's not putting out water, you have the potential to, tear up your well. And then, we were using a basic automation, and for the future, I'd like to go more advanced, maybe have a sensor in the field and it telling me to turn the well on or off, or go further than that and it actually controlling the well, which you've been a part of. But I would like to see us go that way.
I just would want to close by saying we've tried to indicate that there's levels of automation that are available. And so it doesn't have to be fully automated, whatever might be best for a particular operation. But it's important that we can think of these as opportunities for tech-minded people. It may be a daughter, a son, a nephew, a niece, someone that this makes for a great little project, right? For people to get their kind of dip their toe in the water, see if it's applicable, how it's going to work. The system that we used on your farm was about $1,000. Mm-hmm. And there's opportunities to figure out, well, if you couple that with the sensor, can you share that sensor in other fields? Some people say, I wouldn't want to do that. Other people say, I wouldn't want to try to afford a sensor in each field. So not necessarily talking about soil moisture sensors, but the water level sensors. Right. So it's an opportunity for people to try, and you don't have to go full auto, right, although that does work. Remote shutoff timers seem to be offering irrigation savings. We're going to have a better feel for this after next year. Right. But it sure seemed to make sense that they would. And that was on fields that, as you indicate, weren't even very far from your house.
That's right. They were close to home.
It was,
Yeah. And I just thought of something, Joe. I did this not even from the house at nighttime or whatever, but even when we went on vacation at the beach, I didn't have to rely on somebody else to be in charge of these fields to shut them on and off manually. I just do it off my phone.
That's cool. Take me to the beach next time.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about the beach. Full automation, I didn't talk much about this from the Mississippi County, but we in 2020 worked with full automation where the farmer, of course we're keeping an eye on it, but the system turned itself on and off from about July on. And then the 2021 study where I mentioned with the soybeans and the soil moisture sensors that we were reading ourselves and then sending the information, Still, the farmer commented how he liked the auto rotate feature, that once he was going to go and start that, it took over from there. So that again offers opportunities for some people that may be interested. ACES, really hoping that some of you might be interested in working with us to field test this method. It really represents one of the first opportunities to improve Cascade rice flood irrigation. A lot of the other efforts have focused on other practices, but it could offer savings on par with MIRI. And I'll hope that some of you would be interested in working with us and getting a free setup with that. And then again, for those that are interested in promoting and developing this is MyAg. And with that, I think we'll close.
And our emails are available at the beginning of the slide. If anybody has any questions, feel free to contact us.
Awesome, perfect. Yeah. Thank you all very much for your time.
I hope you're enjoying the Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference so far. I would like to announce the student poster winners. But first of all, let's thank our sponsors for the student poster contest. PNR Surge Systems Incorporated, Farm Credit Associations of Arkansas, and also Arkansas State University's Ecotoxicology Research Facility. Let's begin with the undergraduate winners. We had 2 places in the undergraduate contest. First place goes to Lily Fox. Lily is an A-State Biological Science student. And the second place is also an A-State Biological Science student, and that goes to Trenton Barker. Congratulations, our undergraduates. Good job. In our master's competition, we had 4 winners. The first place goes to Casey Guy. Casey is in the Environmental Sciences program at A-State. In the second place goes to Victoria Lighty. She's also in the Environmental Sciences program at A-State. Third place winner in the master's category goes to Rainey DeRoyne. Rainey is a master's student in biological science at A-State. And the fourth place winner is Margarita Livet. Margarita is a University of Arkansas biological and agricultural engineering student. Congratulations to our masters. The PhD winners, first place goes to Amelia Atwell. Amelia is a PhD candidate in the Environmental Sciences program. Second place goes to Leah English. Leah is a PhD student at the University of Arkansas Agricultural Economics and Agribusiness program. Third place goes to Brittany Singleton, and Brittany is a PhD student in the Environmental Sciences program at A-State. Congratulations to all of our students. They all did a great job, and especially congratulations to the winners. Thank you again for the sponsors for the student poster contest. Those include PNR Surge Systems Incorporated, Farm Credit Association of Arkansas, A-State Ecotoxicology Research Facility. And follow the link below and go to the bottom of the page to see all of the students. They all did a great job with their posters. Thank you.
We certainly appreciate all the poster contestants who entered, and congratulations again to the winners. Now it's one of my favorite parts of the conference, the presentation of the Outstanding Conservationist Award, which is sponsored by the Judd Hill Foundation.
We are grateful for our partnership with the Judd Hill Foundation, which makes possible our Outstanding Conservationist Award. The award is presented to an individual who is a leader in the field of conservation, and 2022 marks the 9th year for the conference to present this award. Our honoree embodies what this award stands for. He manages his family's 3,300-acre farming operation, which produces rice, cotton, corn, and soybeans. In the early 90s, he recognized water quantity would soon be a critical concern and over the next 30 years, he converted their Otwell farm, which is located west of Crowley's Ridge, to 100% surface water irrigated, while also implementing a number of water quality and soil health practices over their entire operation. In addition to leading by example with implementation of conservation practices, our honoree has served in countless capacity as a community leader, serving as a commissioner of the Arkansas Soil and Water Commission, a member of the Buffalo Island Drainage District. In 2022 will mark his 20th year serving on the Craighead County Conservation District Board. Through these roles, he has been instrumental in spearheading multiple programs that have benefited farmers and landowners in Northeast Arkansas. His achievements include working to secure critical groundwater designation for the Cache River watershed, enabling producers to benefit from higher conservation tax credits. Through his leadership, the Buffalo Island Drainage District sponsored a 319 project which addressed water quality and implemented conservation practices on over 80,000 acres. It is my distinct pleasure to present the 2022 Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference's Outstanding Conservationist Award to Mr. Alec Farmer. Alec.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate this award. I prepared a few comments so I don't leave anybody out, and I just want to read from them now. Since I first became active in state and local conservation issues over 20 years ago, the Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference at Arkansas State University has been the state's leading forum for soil and water conservation issues and education. I want to thank the SWEC Planning Committee and the Judd Hill Foundation for this award and recognition. 20 years ago, I never thought of myself as a conservationist. There were problems in my area affecting soil erosion and declining groundwater tables that eventually were going to impact our farm sustainability, and realized something needed to be done. I guess you could say I became a conservationist out of necessity. Over the years, I've been very fortunate to work with producers like Jerry Don and Tommy Clark, who saw the value of tailwater recovery and reservoir improvements, and others in eastern Craighead County who recognized that erosion control measures on a large scale were needed to prevent our sandy loam soil from washing away. I've been blessed to work with hardworking, forward-thinking people every step of the way, whether it's been with the Craighead Conservation District, the Buffalo Island Drainage District, the Arkansas Natural Resources Commission, the state and local NRCS offices, the AACD, or our local and regional conservation districts. Again, thank you for this award, and thank you, Kevin.
Congratulations, Alec.
Thank you, Alec, and again, congratulations. And thank you for your efforts as a conservation leader. Now it's time for our question and answer segment. So please take a little time and enter some questions in the Q&A box. If you've not, if you've not entered your questions, again, please remember to go to our Q&A box icon at the bottom of your screen and enter your questions. We're going to invite some of our speakers back to have them answer some of the questions from the audiences. Also, at the end of the Q&A poll, there will be a poll provided for you to enter your CEU credits, whichever ones are needed. So we're going to start off here with a question to Miss Jennifer James. How do you know when you need to try something new that that deals with irrigation and innovation that may be needed on your farm?
Well, the way we kind of went about it was as we started something new and we mastered it, then we started looking for something else to work with. We just kind of felt like it was important to focus on one thing at a time and try to get that working in as many different scenarios as possible before we went on to something else.
Sounds great. Thank you. Mike, what is the market price for some of these systems that we've heard about today?
Well, there's a lot of different numbers that I can throw out there on the market price of them. But what I would like to tell you, the take home message is that there's some funds available at your local NRCS office to help with some of these irrigation water management technologies. So go to your local NRCS and ask them about IWM 449.
Yes, definitely, for sure. We've heard a lot about irrigation practices here in the Mid-South and Arkansas. We have over 300 participants participating in today's conference. We have a question from a young man. Are these techniques available in Africa? Dr. Massey? Or any of our speakers? Mike? Dr. Burcham?
Sorry, Kevin. This is Joe.
No, sorry, no problem.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I would say a lot of the techniques are applicable, assuming that their land is sufficiently level, since we use furrow irrigation a lot and flood irrigation. Otherwise, overhead sprinkler irrigation would be the practice that they would probably be looking at. And others may have opinions.
Sounds great. Clay, I know you and Dr. Joe talked about several different techniques that you're using there in Greene County. And what would be, if you had a wish list, what would your wish list or top suggestions for markers for irrigation automation?
For devices.
Just what would the features be of that system?
Yeah, the features that we're using, the text alert on and off is great. Also knowing if the well is actually pumping so you don't tear a well up would be great. Also using sensors in the field, tying them with the on off so it can remotely do it. Also that'd be great.
And this is for Mike, Jan, any of our extension agents out there in the field. With the increase in mostly all of our input costs, will we see or are y'all seeing a price increase and an impact on irrigation automation going into 2022?
I hate to jump in, but yeah, there's a ripple effect to all of it, with the fertilizer prices and look at glyphosate, it's hard to find and the price of it's going up all the time. So yeah, there's a ripple effect out there, but don't hesitate to call your county agent or your NRCS and there's some of this stuff that we can put out there in a demonstration, like Jan said earlier, and not cost you a thing.
Jennifer, for a producer who implemented new techniques, what would you say the most unexpected or surprising thing you learned by implementing one of these irrigation practices?
Well, right off the bat, when we started with our furrow irrigation, just the drastic reduction in the hours on our tractors, from not having to tear down and rebuild levees all summer long, and the hours that we saved on our labor. It was really shocking when we started looking at that, and it really motivated us to push harder and to continue establishing and learning about new practices as we went forward.
Brandon, would you like to add anything on that? What's some of the things that surprised you?
Yeah, I would like to say that what surprised me the most was how easy the equipment was to use, and then also how saving a day or two on each irrigation, saved an irrigation or two at the end of the year.
Yeah, some of this equipment can seem, there's so many acronyms and so many brands, and we start throwing all these irrigation terms around, and it gets overwhelming, like Jennifer said. So once you get your hands on some of this technology though, and actually start using it, it's not as scary as it is in the beginning.
Clay, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, using the timer, the remote on and off, unexpectedly, the first 2 or 3 times I used it, I was kind of concerned if it was going to work or not. And then once I got confident with it, then I could just use it and not go look at it. That was kind of unexpected for me, but you know, as it seemed to work, then I could not worry about it.
All right. Mike, we got a question concerning PVC pan pipes in rice fields, PVC pipes with holes around them. Has there been any work with using those in rice irrigation?
Yes, they've been used to see the water depth down in the soil profile. I know Dr. Crutch used them down in Mississippi State quite a bit, and I think Dr. Henry has used them. They're pretty valuable to see exactly how far down in the profile the water level is. But as far as in a rice situation, you know, you're more worried about the flood than you are the water down in the profile. As you know, for weed control and herbicide efficiency, herbicide activation and what have you. So.
And Kevin, I'll jump in. This is Joe.
Yes, sir, Joe.
We've had good success in using those field tubes in row rice up on top of the bed. And then coupling that either with, you can use your eyes to see inside the tube, or an ultrasonic sensor works well. So I would encourage their use in that regard.
All right. Well, Mike, you know, and Dr. Joe, both of y'all, we mentioned the profile, soil moisture profile. Mike, you know, we talked about soil moisture units earlier. What recommended depth would you recommend for placing soil moisture sensors, and why?
Well, in Arkansas, we recommend 6, 8, or excuse me, we recommend 6, 12, 18, and 30-inch depths. And the reason we recommend those depths is because you're watching the soil and the water infiltration at 6 inches and 12 inches and 18, and even down to 30. You get to watch that progress. Not only irrigation infiltration, but rainfall. You get to see what a 1-inch rain does, a 2-inch rain. You get to see if it's getting down there or not. And then you get to watch your roots where they're taking water from various depths. You know, sometimes we'll see that 18 and 30-inch sensor move like we did in Jennifer's slide. And there's others down in Stuttgart where I put some down there, and I've never seen the 12-inch move. So they're very, very crucial to put them at various depths so that you can see that movement and see that infiltration.
Dr. Reba, is there anything you would like to add from the research that you've conducted over soil moisture units?
No, not really at this point. Sorry, Kevin.
Oh, no problem. Dr. Joe, is there any ability to tie well automation, soil moisture sensors, weather stations, all that data together?
I think that certainly the first components can be tied together, and then the weather stations. I know that's fairly straightforward to shut a well off given a certain amount of rainfall. I know I've had some people talk to me about looking at weather data and forecasting the need for irrigation, and that may be being done and probably will be in the future. But certainly tying all the sensors together to control the well, and then even a rain gauge to shut off the well given a certain amount of rain, that's all being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon, you know, earlier you talked about using computerized hose selection, telemetry units, soil moisture sensors, surge valves. Do you use any other type irrigation management tools such as a reservoir or tailwater recovery on your operation? I think you may be muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, ma'am.
All right, yeah, we do. We've got about 6 reservoirs on our farm. All of them are set up with tailwater, surface water recovery, and that's something that's very crucial to our farm just because of our limited groundwater situation that we have, and it's a lot more efficient also than pumping it out the ground.
For sure. Thank you. Clay, I have a question for you. What's the next steps for irrigation automation on your farm?
Yeah, so like I said a while ago, tying the moisture sensor to the well to turn it on and off is probably the next step. So right now I'm just doing it off my phone, turn it on when it needs to be and off when it needs to be. I'd like to tie the moisture sensor into the well so it'll do it on its own. And I know there's some challenges. There's some visual. You got to make sure it's actually getting to the sensor, make sure it's actually watering out. But that's something to look ahead in the future.
Sounds great. Dr. Reba, what type soil works best for these systems? Is there any limiting soil factor, a very sandy soil that some of our irrigation techniques may be limited on?
Kevin, thank you for that question. I think that you need to know your field and look at where you're going to put these sensors that will help you inform those decisions. And like any decision that you're going to make, you're going to look at a certain part of that field, and so you might instrument that part of the field to inform your decision making. There are some sensors that work better or worse if you have more clay or more sand on those extreme ends. So again, talk to your extension agent, your technicians at the NRCS, and they can certainly help inform you on those specific things.
Well, thank you. Also, I know with your recent research, is there any research indicating an improvement in groundwater table depths in areas where surface water recovery has been implemented?
Yeah, there are some indications of that. We recently came out with a paper that was looking at some groundwater levels in the cache. It's also the very central focus of the Arkansas Groundwater Initiative, which is a collaboration led by the NRCS in concert with the USGS and my unit here in Jonesboro, really looking at some long-term efforts to determine how well are we doing when we implement these surface water practices. And it's a multi-year effort and something that we're real keen on trying to understand. A big part of that effort is adding additional measurement locations, both surface water and groundwater measurements, to just get a better picture of how those practices are influencing the resource.
Sounds great. Thank you. Jennifer, what do you feel like may be the next phase of irrigation technology being implemented there on y'all's family's farm?
Well, I think moving in more into the automation, a lot of the examples that Clay and Dr. Massey were talking about, I think are things we're interested in as well. It is like one of the questions earlier, it is difficult to try and allocate the funds, to go toward that when you may or may not have the profitability or the financial background within your own records to show you that it's going to be economical and better. I think that's where a lot of farmers, we have a hard time, spending money on new things. Sometimes we tend to go with what we know, so to speak. So we try to be forward looking, but I think that automation really will save us time and help us to be more efficient. I think the examples that he gave about being able to, that well that's on the back side of the field, we all know it doesn't get to, folks don't get back there like they ought to, right? So yeah, moving toward the automation, I think is a big step ahead for us.
Sounds great, and good luck with that. Brandon, I know congratulations with your most crop per drop. There's talk that these yield contests are just a beauty contest, and that the entries pour additional inputs and kind of cherry pick certain locations for the harvest location, and that's why they win. How is the irrigation contest different? And if so, let us know. What do you feel?
Okay, yeah, at the end of the day, it's still a yield contest, but you don't really necessarily get to cherry pick the actual spot in the field. I mean, you pick your field, you can pick the area of the field you want to harvest. But you have to go, from top to bottom of that field, not just picking the very best spot. Also, this one's, you're measuring your efficiency with your water. It's just one more way to, just try to improve your operation and your farm.
Sounds great. Clay, I know you talked about the techniques you're using there on your farm and not being able to get to that well there on the back side of the farm, then also being able to be at the beach and still kind of be able to stay engaged with what's going on back there in Greene County. What would you be or what would be a reasonable payback time for investment in IA technology and say remote shutoff there for you and in your operation?
I'd say really quick. I'd say the first year or the first couple times you use it. I really didn't know how it was going to work. If it's unreliable, then it's not going to be a very good payback. You're going to be messing with it all the time. You're going to have problems. But the system we use worked really well. I didn't have to rely on anybody else to handwrite out what I'm doing, turn this on at this time, turn it off at this time. So I'd say being able to do it on your own from any location, it has a very quick payback period.
Sounds great. Brandon, I know you talked about tailwater recovery, irrigation, reservoirs. How deep is the groundwater in your location?
Our groundwater is down about 45 feet, I believe. Our wells, they're about 100 feet, from 80 to probably 110, 15 feet deep. I don't think we're able to go any deeper in our area. I've heard that if you go deep, you get salt water. I'm not real sure about that, but we're pretty limited in our area on the formation. I don't think wants to turn loose of the water. So we've got a lot of small wells with a lot of low flow.
What is that typical flow on a well in your area?
I would say around 500 gallons a minute would probably be a decent average, from as low as probably 200 to around 1,000 if you're lucky to get a good 6-inch well.
Wow. So definitely every tool that you can have in your toolbox, every way you can capture a drop of water that the Lord lets fall on your farm, you've got to make sure you're reusing it. And I'm going to kind of ask this to all of our producers, and we've heard a lot of cons already that you're experiencing. Is there anything that of course, we've heard our pros, but have you run into any cons, I should say, that you've experienced by using any of these systems? Has there been any hiccups along the way?
I'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. And when you're using stuff and you're brand new to using some of these technologies, I know when soil moisture sensors came around, and we started putting those in and putting in new telemetry units to be able to read those. Sometimes things go wrong. We'll be tracking and watching on our phones and saying, oh yeah, this is working great. And as an extension agent, I'm trying to show the farmer how well these systems work. And then I'd get a phone call from one of our producers and say, hey, this sensor's wacky. I need to know if I need to irrigate or not. It's throwing weird codes up and I'm just unsure of this technology. And so that has happened. Sensors do go out, especially if you're using them from year to year and not rebuilding them each year. So that is something that we saw, that didn't help our faith in these sensors at all when I would get those phone calls and I'd call Mike or I'd call Greg Simpson or Russ and say, hey, something wacky is happening here. And so sometimes that happens and we have to be ready for that. And, some of those were just as simple as changing out a sensor. It was, those sensors have a lifeline on, a limited lifeline. So some of those sensors were old and we had replaced them with a new one, and then we would go off and we'd just kind of watch that sensor, and we'd still be leery of it, but it would go back to working. So you do have things that happen from time to time, and you just have to roll with that.
Yeah,
Jennifer?
Kevin, I'd
Go
like
ahead,
to
Mike.
add. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. You know, I had a producer say one time that polypipe's a 4-letter word. I won't tell you his name, but his initials are Scott Matthews. And I'm telling you, there's always a hiccup here and there, no matter what. When you're trying something new, there's going to be some obstacles to overcome. You've got the polypipe that you've got to pull up at the end of the season, you know, and that handling that a second time is a pain. You know, and it rolling on you and floating on you. And Steve Craig over Mark Tree used to tell me, he said, I don't know how that stuff floats. He said, but then again, I don't know how a steam engine floats, but it does. So you're going to have a lot of stuff go wrong, but the benefits are so over the top on a lot of this stuff. Even Scott just texted me a while ago. He said, I'm in a critical groundwater area. We would love to be 45-foot depths over around the Wiener area. You know, we're 100, 125 foot to water over there with wells down to 200 foot or so. And he is so impressed that this season in some of his rice fields, not a drop of water ever run off the field this year with the using multiple inlet. So he didn't lose any water. He used the freeboard like we recommend and didn't lose a drop. And he just said, you just can't imagine how good that feels.
Jennifer or Clay, would y'all like to add anything?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to piggyback a little bit on what Jan said about the technology. And I mean, a lot of these computers, they will fail. They're electronics and things are going to go wrong. So I think it's important for us to be sure and feel comfortable that we understand what is supposed to be happening. Like when you're looking at those readouts, you know, we need to learn enough about the processes that we can troubleshoot when those problems do come up. It's kind of like, you know, I did never think about the corn using more water at 18 inches than 6. I mean, it's duh, but those are the things we've got to be aware of too. So we know when to ask the right questions.
Yes. Clay, you have anything?
Yeah, I'll also add the soil moisture sensors are tricky and you got to figure them out. But once you get them figured out, they're really helpful. Also with using technology such as the computerized hole selections with pipe planner, say get with your local extension or NRCS to help you. Say Greene County's helped us out 100%. And if me and Katie Womack couldn't figure it out, we just called Mike and he could figure it out.
There you go. Just call Mike. You know, Mike a while ago mentioned the Wiener area. Dr. Reba, I know you've been doing some research in that area over artificial replenishing the aquifer. Have you seen any significant any significant concerns about not having the benefit of the natural filtration system between the water and soil?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. We are working real closely with Tom Wimpy and some of the engineering staff at NRCS on that project. I've had 2 master's students that are working in that area as well. A couple of things. In order to artificially put water back into the aquifer, you can't directly inject it into where the water level is. So the only thing that the state is allowing us to do is to put water back in a passive fashion at the top of the aquifer, and then that water has to move through the part of the aquifer that is not saturated. And so we gain the benefit of that filtration capacity of that soil. And I will say on this project, it's motivated by a water quantity question, but it's really also about a water quality question, because we certainly don't want to do anything that's going to impact the quality of the aquifer. And so at the same time that we're actively tracking how much water is moving from A to B, we're also measuring the water quality of that water at each of those points, and then as it moves into the aquifer. So Kevin, to update you on our project, we're about to move water into the systems. The weather has not been ideal for that, but we're hoping to do that sometime starting next week. So
Awesome.
keep fingers crossed, and we hope to be able to have at least a month or 2 or 3 of actively moving water in through those infiltration galleries that have been put in place at the very top of the aquifer, and then having that water move through the material before it gets down to that 120, 130 feet. And again, tracking how much water we're moving, but also tracking the water quality of those pieces. And Kevin, could I add, I wanted to piggyback on Mike Hamilton's comment about Scott Matthews saying that he hasn't lost any water off the edge of his field, which is a great, again, back to that quality, quantity, and how those two things are so nicely linked. Really great improvements on your water use efficiency, but also excellent improvements on reducing the amount of runoff from that field that may potentially have a lot of excess nutrients in that water, nutrients and sediment. And so if you're not allowing that to happen, you're then not contributing to the water quality questions that may be impacting on down the line in the system. So just another component related to your question, and also to applaud Scott Matthews on that management. That's excellent.
Yes, again, addressing both water quality and water quantity. Brandon, I know you talked about some of the practices you've done there to address water quantity. I believe you also have implemented cover crops on your farm there in White County. How's this technology with managing irrigation? How's this taking care of your soil conservation health, bearing in mind, such techniques of soil physics, chemical properties, and biological organisms?
Okay, yeah, we've used a minimal amount of cover crops to this point, just kind of trying them out still. But what we're seeing is, you're keeping something alive on the soil, which is helping keeping your biology alive. Getting increased water infiltration into the soil because of the cover crop and the root systems. It's just overall better, for your soil health and your earthworms, all that biology that's underneath there. They're something for them to live in year round.
And Brandon had mentioned earlier about using surge valves. In some of his fields, he has areas where they're underwater a lot of the time. So getting that water off of those low spots into other parts of the field where he actually needs the water, the surge valve has been able to help him with that. So it lessens the stress on those plants.
Sounds wonderful.
Kevin, this is Joe. I would just point the audience to the Clay Smith's slide that we had on their irrigation use for corn. They feature also cover crop use on their fields, and we're talking 7 to 9 inches of irrigation applied, or around 200 millimeters of irrigation applied, with an assumption of around 15 inches of effective rainfall. The cover crops there are making more effective use of the rainfall, as well as holding soil. So anyways.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Clay. Again, I think today we have shared some amazing facts with what y'all Arkansas producers and you individuals working with those, how we are conserving water here in Arkansas and our soil to leave it in the future for the next generations. Now it's come time to be sure we capture for our participants that are needing the continuing education unit credits. There will be a PO provided to capture those CEUs and the professional development credits. Please enter your information in the PO. And once you receive that PO, please find and select the one that applies to you and fill in that requested information. And the poll is going to be provided shortly. Well, once you receive that poll, please capture those CEUs that you need to have for your positions. It's come time again for the end of the 24th annual Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. Wow, 24 years of sharing the story of soil and water conservation here in the Mid-South. Amazing. I want to thank you for joining us for our second virtual Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. I hope you've enjoyed it. I sure have. I want to thank today's speakers. I want to thank our conference sponsors. I want to thank the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture, Cooperative Extension Service production team. Without them, we could have not put on this virtual conference. And I want to say a special thank you to the members of the Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference Steering Committee. I've been fortunate enough to serve on this committee over 10 years now, and we have a tremendous group of individuals who share a passion for soil and water education here in Arkansas and the whole Mid-South. Again, we hope you've enjoyed the 24th annual Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. We are always wanting to improve this conference. And once you leave the meeting, you will receive a pop-up survey. If you would, please provide us any suggestions you may have how we can improve in 2023 to provide you additional information that makes you better stewards of the land. We hope to see you all again next year in person back in Jonesboro for the 25th edition of the Arkansas Soil and Water Education Conference. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we're all back together in 2023, shaking hands and enjoying each other's company. Until then, stay safe. And remember, eat beef, eat pork, eat chicken, wear cotton, and have a rice day. Thank y'all.